Okay, this is a very informal video on the Moose Marathon. This is kind of like in Avatar when they do their kind of like video logs, but they do it just to like record their thoughts for what they've seen in the day. And I guess emotions are still relatively fresh. It's only been like a week or so, or a week or two. But I think it'd be good to at least get some thoughts down on the Moose Marathon, which happened a couple weeks ago. I forget, September. It's like beginning of September, like September 7th-ish. But yeah, we'll get started. So I remember signing up for the marathon sometime in the winter with Jordan and Spencer. One second. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, this is going to be my first trail marathon. I've never ran a trail marathon before. Luckily, going into it, I felt like I was prepared enough to finish it, which is good, just based off of my athleticism, based off of my previous history of running marathons, running, just in general. Running at Lebanon Hills pretty regularly. And I remember feeling kind of like a different community. I feel like within the trail group, because I remember we were just kind of standing around at the beginning, all four of us, Jordan, Spencer, Tim, and I. Actually, I had met someone I graduated with. Her name was Mara, and she was one of the aid station volunteers. And that was kind of random to connect with her. I hadn't seen her since college, and she married the first trumpet that I sat next to, named Garrett, in the St. Louis band. So that was kind of funny at like 7 a.m. or something like that, meeting her. I remember starting the trail. This will be good for people that haven't ran it. So I remember starting the trail, and it was just a straight gravel road, nothing crazy. But then we all turn into kind of like the forest area, you could say. And then it kind of slowed down because everybody kind of got bottlenecked at the beginning. So you're kind of just like shuffling along, just waiting for people to just kind of get through the forest. And then once it kind of opened up, it was kind of 7-8 miles of up and down and super, super technical, like roots and rocks. And to be honest, it wasn't that challenging. It was more fun. And I think that's just because like everyone's fresh. Everyone's got tons of vitality, energy. We tried to stay together as best we could, I think, until about, what was it? Probably like mile 7 or 8 or 9, whenever the first aid station was. Once that hit, I feel like we kind of separated from then on, just because people could kind of go at their own pace a little bit more. So Jordan and I kind of stayed back. Spencer and Tim kind of went ahead. The aid stations were hilarious. I mean, you walk in, you kind of shuffle in, and they're just like bombarding you, like, can I fill your water? Can I do this? And there were like cookies, bright crawlers, pretzels, fruit, potatoes, like sweet potatoes, I want to say, sandwiches, candy even. There was like everything, bacon, I think. There was so much food, but I wasn't focused on food because I hadn't trained with food. So I was just kind of going off of how I trained. So I had like plenty of gels, grabbed a gel. I was doing like a gel like every 3 miles or 4 miles after that, after I took my first one at like or at the first aid stop. Then I think we were taking salt pills about every hour or so. And you can kind of feel, I kind of regret not having a Camel pack because I knew I was thirsty and I could have drank more water and I would have felt better. But yeah, it's kind of a feel. You just have to kind of preemptively eat. And when you eat, just walk for like a couple minutes, and then after that, it's pretty easy. Luckily, I didn't get a stomach ache or anything because I was kind of afraid, like, oh my gosh, like if I'm eating sandwiches, am I gonna be able to digest this or what? But luckily, it worked out. I remember mile like I don't remember specific miles. I just remember specific points in like relative to like the major hills. I remember having a lot of fun during the first major incline. I don't even know what it's called. But I just remember there's like a rocky cliff. It's like, I think there's a picture of it that Jordan took that's on his Facebook page. But there's a rocky cliff. It wasn't really like a trail. It was more of just like a culmination of rocks to climb over or climb up, like over, but then it's not like you're climbing all the way down. You're just kind of slowly elevating up. And yeah, it wasn't, I mean, we just took the hills easy, Jordan and I. We just walked them. It wasn't like we were trying to go for broke or anything. And then going down wasn't too bad. To be honest, it wasn't my quads that were really sore. It was more the technical abilities that were needed for just everything to coordinate to dodge all the roots and the rocks on the downhills, which is different. It takes like a different training. So I don't think I trained well enough in regards to going up and down hills and adding roots and rocks, you could say. Just because I remember it was kind of treacherous at times. I mean, there'd be some slippery parts, some other parts wouldn't be slippery. Sometimes the roots would be really slippery. Sometimes it'd be dry. Sometimes it'd be rocks that weren't necessarily like in the middle. They'd be like off to the side, but then coming out like this. And I remember just kind of following the crowd. Like we'd all run up and then we all kind of shuffle down. A couple of people would fall, but not a ton. There wasn't really like a path during the entire marathon that was clear of rocks and roots. So I felt like it was very repetitive, rocks and roots, trying just to find some sort of rhythm or difficulty accepting no rhythm to the run, which like takes effort. I mean, because you're constantly working to not fall, to keep up, right? And then after like I think the second or third incline, it started to get tougher from a standpoint of some of the obstacles. I felt like they were tougher to combat because I didn't know them. So like for example, we had these two boards, right? So you got two boards, and it's just going across kind of like marshy type of scenario. So like on either edge is like just straight up mud. Oh, by the way, there'd be like mud patches. Like you'd be running a good 40-50 feet and there'd be like rocks randomly, but then for the most part it was just running through mud. So that was interesting because then it was like, oh, time to get dirty. But yeah, so the two boards, and some, you had to jump on it like this, and then sometimes you get boards that are just nailed across. They got like this nice, not barbed wiry, but like this wiry stuff on it that makes it so your shoes can like catch it, if that makes sense. And then there were other times where it was slippery, and other times these two boards that were like together were actually kind of like this. So it's kind of like at a slant. On top of that, if they weren't actually pinned to the ground, you'd be running, right? And if you got two boards like this, right, and you're pressing down on the end in front of you, you could see them pop up, and then vice versa, you could see them pop up if you wanted to behind you if you were at the end of the wooden board. So if you had multiple people on the same board, it was like there was some chaos there. Like, hey, wait a second, like, wait for me to get over. But There were a couple narrow areas, narrow board areas where you're kind of going through like um what you may call it. There'd be like a creek underneath you, so you like had to travel over a very thin board. So a lot of it was just being very cautious when it came to those boards. And then I'm almost confident I did twist my ankle, but I didn't know it. I think there was just so much adrenaline running through my bloodstream. I remember kind of when it happened, and this would have been like in between mile 12 and 20, we'll say. Um, I remember kind of like my ankle kind of going like that, and then I was like, oh, it's a really flexible ankle, I guess. Ankles are supposed to do that. So it didn't bother me. Also, my knees didn't bother me a ton. I would say maybe 3 instances where it was painful, but it was only painful for like a couple minutes. So that was really surprising just because, I mean, I was running on the trail. It's not high impact, and you're not really running a ton. You're just kind of like shuffling, scooting around. And then I would say around mile 23, I want to say. Oh, also, I didn't even have like one of those gardener things. That was kind of annoying because when I had trained, I could train with my phone, and when you're on the trail, there are no mile markers. Heck no. So that would have been a little bit better, at least for tracking salt pills. I think there was one part where I got kind of woozy, but you can kind of catch it like, oh, geez, I need to drink some water or take a salt pill or eat something. So that was good. So like around like mile 20 to 23, I want to say, I was really surprised. What I thought wasn't gonna go or like kind of be my weakest link was actually my weakest link, and that was actually like, it felt like cardiovascular system for some reason. I don't know why. But I'd start running like a normal pace, like a normal jog, like a 10-minute mile, and then I'd start breathing really hard, and it was my I could just feel my heart rate just skyrocket. And I'm just like, what? I've ran 20 miles before, like my heart's fine normally. And then I was very cautious. In fact, I would probably say I walked probably about 60% of the race, probably a good half of it. And it's not like you're like walking. It's just like you're just inhibited by like long treks up mountainsides and then long kind of like treks down. And it's not like you're walking necessarily. It's just you're just spending time just kind of shuffling down the mountainside, and then I don't know. Apparently, some people probably just ran up the hills, but I was just like, no, I'm taking a leisurely hike up these hills. But I would say what did me in was surprisingly, and I love my cardiovascular system. Like it can take on so much, but like mile 20, 23, it was like not having it. And I was like, what? And then also what was interesting are my ankles. And the reason it was my ankles is because when I started to pick up speed, I start tripping more. I probably had like 5 occurrences where like could have been a nasty fall, but luckily like saved it, you could say. But my ankles, surprisingly, they were really tired at the end of at like 23, mile 23. So I didn't trust myself as much to pick up the pace and start running because I would trip when I started to pick up my pace. So I just kind of like walked when I needed to, and then if there were no rocks or roots nearby, then pick up and go. But it wasn't. I don't know. I don't know if my hip flexors were tired or maybe my ankles were tired or maybe it was my calves. But that was kind of a bummer. I was like, I feel like I lost faith in my ankles, you could say. And they were just tired. And I think it's because I did sprain one of them, but I didn't realize it at the time. And I wouldn't even call it a full-on sprain. I just knew it was really sore and swollen the next morning. But then, like, by 2 days later, it was fine. So probably like minor sprain, not even. but enough to just like decrease his capacity. And I think part of it was a carelessness. I think it was carelessness because there'd be times where I'm just like, I don't know where to step, and I'd just be running. We're talking running, and this is at the beginning. And we'd be running, and if I stepped on a rock or a root, I really didn't care if my foot was kind of like that, like off to the side, and then boom, impact. So it's like impacting, but you're like landing on the side of your foot, or while it's like this, so that's a different type of impact, you know? And then like doing it over and over again on like different types of surfaces, different roots, different rocks. I was just kind of careless, I would say. And then I think maybe over time, repetitively, my feet were just like, man, you've stepped on uneven surface for so long that like, we're tired, man. So maybe it was carelessness. I don't think during the race I wanted to quit. I knew I'd get through it. I didn't have a ton of negativity, which is surprising. There were times where I was like, man, who created this trail? I put it kind of kiddingly. It was never, I really did enjoy it, making long treks up the hills, because I could really feel my body and my heart working. And each hill was like celebration, because they were relatively big hills. I didn't know what it would feel like, you could say. But yeah, I mean, I just kept going. I remember reading a book, I think you recommended it, Dad, to all three of us. It was called, I think it's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And I just kind of visualized him running next to me, like, all right, just keep going. So it really didn't like, I never felt like I wasn't going to make it. I always knew I was going to make it. It was just, I would say I walked a good portion of the last 3 to 4 miles, and wasn't my plan, but I guess for the future we kind of know like what to expect, and just to do some harsher training if I do decide to do it in the future. But overall, it was a very fun run. I feel like I really did push myself to a limit, which was good. I didn't want to initially. I didn't want to push limits, but I think I was forced to, due to my, I was pushing my cardiovascular system, which I didn't think it would even get to that point. But the reason I knew that is because that evening, I had like a low-grade fever, which was confusing because I was like in a pool setting, right? The pool is, I wasn't inside the actual water, but we were at the pool getting ready to go in the sauna. And I remember like not shivering, but kind of like just like, this is weird. I'm like cold or something. Then once I got in the sauna, everything's hot. But then like get back to the place where we were sleeping, and I was like shivering under the covers. And I'm like, what? Apparently low-grade fever can happen when you've damaged your body. So that was kind of like an indication, like, whoa, you put some limits to the test, you could say, and I always love doing that. I love pushing limitations within reason, because I think it's a good thing to do. I think it's a good thing to push limits in all areas of your life. Any last thoughts before I don't have to remember this as much? Good community. Everyone loved hanging out with the dog. Super easy to talk to. Really cool to finish as like brothers. Wow, I feel like it's gonna be a very memorable moment. Finishing, all three of us, although Spencer finished like I think at 5 hours and we were like at 6 hours 40 minutes. Surprisingly middle of the crowd. I looked at my percentile and I was like 45th percentile. I'm like, what? I thought I got my ass kicked at 6 hours 40 minutes, and that was half. That means half the people that still needed to finish. They probably finished into the 7 and the 8 hours and the 9 hours, probably. Um, so I was happy I finished, and I could still walk fine. I feel like it was, I couldn't, I couldn't think very well after the marathon. Jordan and Spencer, I feel like weren't challenged a ton. Um, Spencer probably could have challenged himself more. Jordan definitely could have challenged himself more, but he wanted to stick around with me. I kind of knew I was going to be the weak link, but that's okay. I mean, we got through it. Yeah, this is actually a cool thing. You really don't meet, like, it's kind of funny saying it, but just like you don't really meet shitty people when you're out there running marathons like that. Because I'm thinking to myself, okay, if you're out here, you probably have some level of discipline, right? Normally, to be successful in life, like you have to have some sort of discipline in any of your life. Number two, like hardworking, persevering, intelligent, right? You have to be pretty intelligent to run a race like that and just be really equipped for it. I felt like everyone was a really hardcore runner. I'm like, geez. But I felt like everyone just kind of got along with each other, which I think is a really cool thing within any sort of community or any sort of sport like that. Yeah, a lot of cool camaraderie, and everyone's different age groups, all across the board. Yeah, overall, it was a fun experience. Pushed limits, good quality time with Jordan Spencer and Tim as well, and I got to meet Tim's family as well. Really, really cool people. Yeah, but until another marathon, this kind of sums up my thoughts, so I have them documented, and you can obviously watch it as well.